You're out in the jungle and you hear something and you look up, you see this big furry black thing, long tail, sharp claws, and fuzzy ears, and you wonder, what is it? Well, to answer your question, it is the binturong. Now, you might ask yourself, just what is the binturong? Well, binturong, or more formally known as Archaeopteryx binturong, is a member of the Viverridae family, meaning it's related to civets and genets. Now, if you don't know what a civet or genet is, these guys are also distantly related to weasels, if that does help at all. Now, these guys are small to medium sized. They can get up to about 2 to 3 feet in length and weigh anywhere from 30 to 50 pounds, averaging at about 40, with females being 20% longer and heavier than the males. Males also can live up to about 19 years, while the females only can live to about 16 at the max. Now, these guys are also special because within the order Carnivora, there are only 2 mammals that have a prehensile tail, and the binturong is one of those 2. Now, the prehensile tail of the binturong makes up about 1/3 of their overall body length and is incredibly muscular, strong. It is usually used as a 5th hand when climbing up in the trees, and these guys are also special because they have a 180-degree ankle joint, meaning it's very easy for them to climb up and down, head first in the trees in which they dwell, within southeastern Asia, Indonesia, Malaysia, Sumatra, Borneo, those areas. Now, these guys are also well known because of a certain musk they exhume from under their tail. And this musk is very special because while it is also used to mark territory and mark when a female is an estrus, it also, to those who have smelt it, has a very strong resemblance to buttered popcorn, which in and of itself is rather weird. And these guys were first found in 1822 by the name of Sir Thomas Raffles. And before that, though, they were known by the native peoples, also known as the Tinturun, and was usually sometimes an omen, sometimes not, and is actually kept as a pet in southeastern Asia by many people, and also most famously by the Orang Tlisa tribes, of which there are 18 recognized groups. Now, for reproduction, these guys are special because they have no set breeding season. The females also have delayed implantation, meaning they can engage in coitus, but not get pregnant till a couple weeks, even a month afterwards, usually waiting for optimal conditions. Their mating is also quite strange because they're one of the few mammals in which the male will lick the genitalia of the female before mating. We don't know why, but it is something they do. Now, when giving birth, the females will have a litter of 1 to 2, but there have been recorded instances of up to 6 babies, in which the babies are called bints formally. And these guys will usually be born about 84 to 94 days after the female is confirmed to be pregnant. And these babies rely on the mother for the first few weeks being born, artificially, and not being able to provide for themselves. However, after a few weeks of hiding in mom's fur, these guys are about the size of a domestic cat and already going around independently, eating, climbing, etc. And they will stay with their mother usually a few weeks afterwards. And after about 2 to 3 years, they'll be an adult, in which we can be able to sex them. And sexing is fairly simple for the binturong, because as mentioned earlier, females are about 20% bigger and heavier, but unless you have both side by side, it's hard to tell. So we just use a bit of checking it. Now, with the males, they do have the testicles right above the anus, and the penis just a bit higher up, while the female's vagina is right by the anus. Now, for nutrition, these guys, while they are listed in the order Carnivora, they are actually omnivores, eating mainly plant material, typically 80 to 20 ratio of fruit to meat. though they will also eat fish on occasion and actually do quite enjoy swimming. Now for housing, not a lot of areas in North America house them just because they do require very specific requirements for their housing. They do need a temperature of usually 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, so they don't freeze, especially since they do typically live right on the equator. And they do need a lot of space, usually about 42 square feet for two animals, and they are housed usually in pairs. Even though they are a solitary creature, mated pairs can be put together, though any other combination, i.e. female, female, male, male, usually needs to be very closely watched to prevent injury. They also do need a lot of climbing material, branches, ropes, and the like. Some form of shade, as well as a heating lamp, usually on a rock, just so they can have a nice relaxing nap in the shade. Also, while I did mention other animals should be watched carefully if added, offspring usually have the best chance of adding or being accepted into the group, but even then, watch it very closely. Now, enrichment ideas for these guys, they're fairly easy to do. Again, with the branches and the ropes, add something to it, like big branches so they can nap on, or swaying ropes to add in a bit of balance and not quite training, but making sure they can still exercise their muscles. And again, with the water feature, that helps too, since they do enjoy swimming. And with the water feature or the ropes, add in some fruits and fish even here and there. Toss some fish in the pond, hide some frozen foods or frozen chicks even, like in the trees or in the climbing areas, and they'll go searching for it and have a good old blast. Now, natural behaviors for these guys, they do live in pairs even though they are typically solitary, and introducing these guys for an enclosure is something that must be done very slowly so as to lessen the chance of any injuries and fighting. And as mentioned, they are a nocturnal animal, so they do need a bigger amount of shade so they can hide, otherwise they will get quite stressed quite fast. And then just because these guys are an arboreal animal, they're slower on the ground, but they do have almost a playful streak in them when they are in the trees climbing around. Now, these guys are highly trainable, even though one might not think to look it, and there are certain things needed for training Binturongs. Heavy clothing is a must, just because of their sharp claws. They rarely bite, but the claws are something that is needed to be washed. So heavy, thick jeans, gloves, and then a harness and a leash to help direct it are a big must. And bints, the babies, they will climb a lot, usually up onto the shoulders, which is something that should be discouraged very quickly, because nobody wants a big 50-pound animal up on their shoulders. It's not comfortable. Also, a very, very important thing to keep in mind, again, they are nocturnal. Be very, very careful when moving them between an area of lower lighting to higher lighting, as doing it too quickly can damage their eyes quite severely in some cases. With safety concerns, you have the usual issues. You have obvious zoonotic diseases, a little less in the case of Binturongs. And you also have females on estrus, which is probably the biggest concern when it comes to handling these animals. Do not, under any circumstances, try to handle or interact with a female in estrus. They are easily agitated and very unpredictable, and these are the Binturongs most likely to use those teeth. Speaking of teeth, it is the teeth and the nails, which are the biggest and most obvious concern when handling these guys. These nails are built to easily dig into bark and trees, so they have no problem going through human skin. And again, with the teeth, they rarely bite, but again, with the female in estrus, be aware and do not interact with her. Common diseases these guys will suffer is usually the simple parasites like mange and roundworm, and the big one for these guys is frostbite, just because they are used to living on the equator in the warm areas of Indonesia. Bringing them into a place like North America, for example, it's a lot colder than they're used to. It's Canada, it gets a bit cold. And you need to be very, very aware of the temperature so they don't have any issues in that regard. Dental issues is another big thing, but that is usually when they get older, and that's usually the case with most animals, but dental issues specifically with binturongs, just be careful with that. These guys also can get the usual litany of animal-based diseases, rabies, canine distemper when they get older, parvovirus, leptospirosis, feline panleukemia. Most of these ones are, again, for the aged binturong, but rabies and parvovirus specifically need to be watched from an earlier age, especially since the young aren't susceptible as most are because of the undeveloped immune system. Now, however, these diseases can be prevented fairly easily, as most can be with most animals as well, domestic or exotic. Annual checkups is the biggest thing. Checking them up with a veterinarian, usually designed and trained for exotics, is probably the easiest and best way. There's also getting vaccinations, which binturongs, again, they're fairly docile. Giving them the vaccination is easy, but again, it varies personality to personality. There's also the big thing, especially since these guys are typically in zoos, keeping their enclosures clean, and these need to be cleaned daily. The nests need to be changed of their bedding material. And another big thing, because these guys typically are trained to interact to some degree with the public, educate the handlers first and foremost so neither they or the binturong themselves end up injured in some way, shape, or form. Now, for the complete physical, they get checked for tattoos, weight, temperature, pulse, heart rate, oral cavity, which should be also cleaned annually, as well as eyes, ears, eyes specifically a big thing again, because going back into it, they are nocturnal, need to be checked, as well as checking the reproductive organs, as well as blood testing and checking fecal and urines, just in case. And that's it for what we have on the binturong. This is a list of all the guys we use to gather this information. We do not own any of them, we don't have any stock or anything in them, but they were very helpful in helping us tell you about the binturong. I'm Matt, have a good day.